Once you begin to have a taste of your true nature, of your true self, you begin to get a glimmer of hope because you realize that that is your ticket to freedom, is deeply identifying with the true self. We need to consciously work on freeing ourselves of the personal self. And the way to do that is to create what I like to call spiritual grit. It's akin to deep diving for pearls of wisdom, pearls of truth. In order to gain those insights, we need to keep putting in the effort in order to gain that wisdom. We can think of spiritual grit as the preventative medicine instead of the allopathic medicine that just treats a symptom. If we can look at treating our spirituality holistically so that it becomes a way of being, it becomes a way of life, when we compartmentalize our spiritual practice, we just develop a spiritual ego. We just develop another concept of self. Now I'm a person who has a spiritual practice, therefore I'm spiritual. I'd like to give you some really simple techniques, approaches to applying a more holistic outlook on your spiritual practice so that you can continually build spiritual grit. But before I begin, if at any point you find that this video has helped you, then please help me spread the word by liking, subscribing, sharing with other people that also might benefit from this information. And for those of you who are interested in working with me, I offer one-on-one spiritual coaching as well as energy healing, and you can reach out to me in the email provided in the description box below. Diving for pearls. Some of my favorite movie scenes of all time always have to do with a character arc where the person is actually overcoming something, either through acceptance or through their sheer will. It's sort of like the first Rocky movie with Sylvester Stallone, where he's up against this champion boxer and he feels that he's never going to beat this guy. And then all of a sudden, he decides that he's going to beat this guy. It's like something snaps in him. And he starts punching meat carcasses in his friend's butcher shop, and it's so inspiring. And everybody loves to see that. Why do we find that so interesting? Because it reminds us of our own innate willpower, our own ability to find that strength within us to overcome things. It actually reminds me of a really short story that Yogananda talks about, which really has to do with spiritual grit. He says there were two men fighting. He just calls them A and B. And after a long time, A says to himself, I can't go on any longer. And then B decides, even though as weary as he is, to just give one final punch to A. And down goes A. And Yogananda says, you must be like that. You must give your final punch. You must find within you that unconquerable will that is able to overcome all of the difficulties in your life. And when our spiritual practice plateaus, or we put it on autopilot, so to speak, it's because we are not cultivating spiritual grit. We're not pushing ourselves further and further, deeper and deeper into our practice. Because it's that spiritual grit that drives us further and further into the seat of true self. It gives us that more permanent place there. Will is your greatest power. And interestingly enough, what activates your will is faith. And that's why this idea of spiritual grit to me is like another way of understanding having faith, the importance of devotion, the importance of trust in the intelligence that is operating all of existence. And it's fascinating because Yogananda says that our will is our greatest power and our faith is the activator of our will. And he says the mind is the controller of our prana, which is energy. And when we practice, when we gain that spiritual grit, when we gain that momentum, then we can attune that will to divine will. And then our life becomes one of service. Our life becomes one of effortlessness. Our life is really about just being. Instead of fighting against what is, we become this beautiful channel for what is. Source consciousness is simply experiencing itself in this human form, using grit to transcend the ego. When we're letting go, we're always letting go of our personal self or our ego. Another way of saying this is that we get to decide as consciousness, as awareness of being, what it is that we want to become aware of. And when we identify with what it is that we're experiencing or looking at or thinking about or feeling, then we've lost our true identity. So we can use the power of spiritual grit to transcend the ego by deciding what it is that we want to identify with. And we can do this by asking ourselves a couple really simple questions before we say anything or before we do anything. And you can make this a habit so that you don't even have to think about it anymore. It just becomes your go to approach to how you navigate through life. So, the first one is to always ask yourself, what is my intention behind either saying or doing the thing that I'm about to say or do? And there's always a beautiful choice that we can make when we're interacting with other people, which is where we have the most problems. So, what we're either doing is we're either lifting people up or we're putting people down. So, when we ask ourselves, what is the intention behind saying this thing or doing this thing? And if the intention is that you want to lift somebody up, then you can't get it wrong. But if your intention, no matter how subtle, is that you want to put somebody down, then rest assured that it's not going to go well for you or the other person. Because remember, whatever it is that you're putting out has to go through you before it comes out. So you're going to feel the thing that you're putting out. It's impossible not to. And this is why giving is receiving, because everything that you're receiving as you're giving it, because it's going through you before it comes out. So when we lift people up, guess who gets to experience that too? You. And that's why this becomes such a win win situation, because everything that's beautiful that you are expressing to this other person, you get to feel that. You get to experience that. And we forget this. This is such a fundamental thing to understand. And the more spiritual grit you build around this practice of intending, of asking yourself, am I lifting someone up or am I putting them down? You begin to realize that you are the one that manufactures all of these incredible emotions inside of you. You get to experience love. You get to manufacture that inside of you. It's not something out there. Ascending the lower energies. When what we are, which is our awareness, descends and identifies with our three lower energy centers, we become stressed. Cortisol levels in our body are high. We are in fight or flight mode, and our mind is running amok. And there's very little hope when we're in that unconscious state to be able to transcend these lower energies that we're feeling, which is why when we build our spiritual grit, we have all the ammo that we need to pull ourselves out of the hole when we fall into one. Because life is going to happen and things are going to hit us hard. People are going to die. We're going to lose the people that we love. And it's normal to identify with those emotions as they come up. But when we've built up enough spiritual grit, then we're much more capable of dealing with those really difficult situations. Because what we're doing is getting back more of that awareness. When our awareness forgets about what it is, awareness, then we get into this zombie like state and we become unconscious. And when you're unconscious, then you can't use your awareness to pull you out of that state unless you're so practiced at being aware and having a lot of momentum in the direction of having more awareness. And then you can pull yourself out of that state much more quickly and back into the seat of true self. So we have to set this up before these hardships happen. You know, life is like standing at the break of a wave. If you stand there and you're unconscious, then the wave keeps breaking right on your head. And it's really, really painful. But if you have awareness, then you can see the wave coming before it hits you and you can let go. You can dive into the wave, but you need to see the wave coming. You need your awareness. And having more awareness is 99% of the battle. And what's beautiful about not compartmentalizing your spiritual practice is that life becomes your guru. Michael Singer has said this many, many times. If you look at everything in life as resistance training, you know, every single thing that happens to you is an opportunity for you to let it go. It's an opportunity for you to build that spiritual grit, for you to become more aware of your own awareness. You can use your true self to pull yourself out of the lower self or the personal self, helping yourself to free yourself of yourself. And the point that I really want to make is if we can shift our perspective about our hardships in life so that we're looking at everything that happens to us as an opportunity to transcend. Everything is an opportunity that's being gifted to us so that we can become self realized. I really believe that the point of us being here is a return back to God, is to go home, is to remember what it is that we actually are. And everything that's seemingly bad, because we have such a narrow scope of what's actually happening, is really not bad. It's just this beautiful invitation to return home, to say to yourself, oh, yeah, I can center myself. I can place my awareness here. I can remember that I am pure awareness itself, that what I am is made in the image of God, that I am consciousness. And then your spiritual practice becomes your foundation. It becomes your rock. It becomes the thing that you fall back on, that you have faith in, that you trust on a moment to moment basis, arising and retiring. By now, I hope that I've inspired you, even just a little bit, to really think about incorporating this idea of having more spiritual grit, really seeing all of life's obstacles as opportunities that just make you stronger, that just give you the ability to find equanimity. But now I want to give you some simple tricks that you can use that are going to make a really big difference in your life. And it'll help you gain this momentum in the right direction. So, your mind is the most suggestible right when you wake up in the morning and right before you fall asleep at night. So, this is a really opportune time to commune with God. And the way that I like to do this is the minute that my alarm goes off in the morning and I either hit the snooze button or turn it off, I lie in bed and I keep my eyes closed and I just set the intention for the entire day. And it's different every single day. It's not like an affirmation that I recite. But what I'll do is I'll say things like, thank you so much for creating me. Thank you so much for this life that I get to experience. I love you, God. I love you. Thank you for my family. Thank you for my health. So, gratitude can play a really big role in this communing with God. I'll also ask for energy. I'll say things like, please give me all the energy that I need today to perform all of the tasks that I have to do with kindness, with love, with compassion, with clarity, with awareness. Give me guidance, give me insight. And most importantly, the intention that I love to set is I love to say, please help me remember you in every moment today. And now that might not happen, but it's still wonderful to set that intention because you're strengthening that intention within you every time that you ask for that. And this doesn't have to take long. It can take a couple minutes and then you get up. And we all have a couple minutes to spare, but it's such a wonderful way to start the day. And I do the same thing right before I go to sleep. I reflect on the day and I thank God for all of the things that happened that day. And again, God does not mean a white man sitting in the clouds. God to me is the unmanifested absolute. That's my new favorite way of describing God, which is the way that they describe it in Vedic texts. And so I commune with that. And it's just another way to connect and remind ourselves of Source, which is so important. And I encourage you to make this your own. Find what works for you. The other thing that I love to do, and this is something that Yogananda teaches, is to pray for your food. Anytime you have a drink or a meal or a snack, just take 30 seconds and pray for the food. Thank the divine for what it is that you're about to eat and drink. It's another opportunity to pepper in that awareness, to take that moment of being present, of being aware of your own divinity. In addition to having a set spiritual time to meditate or have your own spiritual practice at least twice a day, what I really love to do is read something that inspires me. And this doesn't have to take long. It can be a paragraph, it can be a page, it can be a chapter, but it is something that I find to be really beautiful to do every single day. There's a short saying that I love that Yogananda says, which is read a little, meditate more, and think of God all day long. And I think this is such a wonderful way to sum up how we need to prioritize our spiritual practice. Reading is important, but it isn't everything. Meditating, much more important. But the most important thing is to remember God all day long. So I hope that this week you can play around with implementing some of these things that I've mentioned, and please let me know how this goes because I love hearing from you. Until next time, remember to let go. Let go of trying to be anything other than the truth of what you are.